Hi, so continuing on our series on mechanism of labor, we will be discussing the pelvis today. So the pelvis is basically the passage and the fetus is the passenger. And it is important to understand the different parts of the pelvis to understand mechanism of labor. So the pelvis is divided into a false pelvis, which lies above the linea terminalis and is supported by the ala of the sacrum. And we have a true pelvis, which is basically the bony part of the pelvis through which the fetus negotiates its way through, and the true pelvis is the most important part of understanding mechanism of labor. Now the true pelvis is divided into an inlet, a cavity and an outlet. Now remember, the inlet is basically a transverse oval. That means the transverse diameter is more than the antero-posterior diameter. The cavity is formed by two planes. The plane of greatest dimension, which is the roomiest part of the pelvis, which is almost circular, and the plane of least dimension, which is the most constricted part of the pelvis. And we have the outlet, which is now an antero-posterior oval. That means the AP diameter is more than the transverse diameter. So keeping these in mind, our next session will be on the different diameters of the maternal pelvis. Hi, so now we will be discussing the pelvic inlet. So the pelvic inlet is basically bounded posteriorly by the sacral promontory, anteriorly by the pubic symphysis, and laterally by the iliopectineal lines. It has three diameters which are important. The transverse diameter is the largest diameter. So the inlet is basically a transverse oval, and this is around 13 to 13.5 centimeters. Then we have the right oblique or the left oblique diameters, which are the diagonal diameters, and these are around 12 centimeters. Then we have the antero-posterior diameters. Now the AP diameters are very important to understand. So right on top, that is from the sacral promontory till the top of the pubic symphysis, is the anatomic or the true conjugate. This does not have any obstetrical significance, and this is around 11.5 centimeters. The obstetric conjugate is from the sacral promontory till the midpoint of the pubic symphysis, and this is the diameter which is actually important because it is the diameter through which the fetus actually traverses through, and this is around 11 centimeter. But what we measure clinically is the diagonal conjugate, that is from the bottom of the pubic symphysis till the sacral promontory, and this is 12.5 centimeters. This is what we measure when we do a PV examination. So how do we arrive at the obstetric conjugate? Is by subtracting 1.5 centimeters from the diagonal conjugate. So these are the important diameters of the pelvic inlet. So the next part we will discuss is the pelvic cavity. The pelvic cavity is basically the part of the pelvis between the inlet and the outlet. Now it's important to remember that the pelvic cavity has two important planes. One is the plane of greatest dimension and the second is the plane of least dimension. So as the word itself suggests, greatest dimension means the roomiest part of the pelvis, and that basically the plane is from the level of S to S3 of the sacrum and is basically a circle. So its antero-posterior and transverse diameter both are the same. They are around 12.5 centimeter. This is the roomiest part of the pelvis. Now what is important is the plane of least dimension, and this plane is basically at the level of the ischial spines laterally and posteriorly at the level of S4, S5. And this is, as the name suggests, the least dimension. That is where most cases of arrest of labor happen, and that is why it is important to know this plane. Antero-posteriorly the diameter is 12 centimeters, but the transverse diameter, that is the bispinous diameter from here to here, this is 10.5 centimeter. You can see the two spinous processes protruding inside, and this is why it is the plane of least dimension. Hi, so now let's discuss the obstetric or the pelvic outlet. The outlet is basically diamond shaped and it is formed by two triangles, an anterior triangle and a posterior triangle. The base of the triangles are basically formed by the bituberous diameter, that is the distance between the two ischial tuberosities here, and this diameter is 11.5 centimeters. Anteriorly we have the pubic symphysis and posteriorly we have the coccyx or the sacrococcygeal joint. Now, so basically the outlet is basically an antero-posterior oval compared to the inlet, which is a transverse oval. So that means the AP diameter is larger than the transverse diameter. The AP diameter is around 13 centimeter and the bituberous diameter is around 11.5 centimeter. So this is about the outlet.